Good morning. Welcome to the September 12, 2025 regular meeting of the San Francisco Ethics Commission. Today's meeting is live cablecast on SFGov TV and live streamed online at sfgovtv.org/ethicslive. For public comment, members of the public may attend in person or may participate by phone or on the WebEx platform as explained in our agenda document. Clerk, can you please explain how remote public comment will be handled?
Certainly, Chair. Public comment will be available on each item on this agenda. Each member of the public will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. For those attending in person, opportunities to speak during the public comment period will be made available here in room 400 at City Hall. For those attending remotely, the public comment period can also be provided via phone call by calling 1-415-655-0001 with the access code 2663-906-0754, followed by the pound sign, then pound again to join as an attendee. When your item of interest comes up, press *3 to raise your hand to be added to the public comment line. Public comment is also available via WebEx client application. Use the WebEx link on the agenda to connect and press the raise hand button to be added to the public comment line. For detailed instructions on how to interact with the telephone system or WebEx client, please refer to the public comment section on the agenda document for this meeting. Public comment may be submitted in writing and will be shared with the Commission after the meeting has concluded and will be included as part of the official meeting file. Written comments should be sent to ethics.commission@sfgov.org. Members of the public who attend the Commission meetings, including remote attendants, are also expected to behave responsibly and respectfully. During public comment, please address your comments to the Commission as a whole and not to an individual member. People who engage in name-calling, shouting, interruptions, foul language, or other distracting behavior may be excluded from participation.
Thank you, Clerk. I now call the meeting to order. Clerk, will you please call the roll under item 1?
Yes. Commissioner Ye?
Present.
Commissioner Francois? Present. Commissioner Tsai?
Here.
Commissioner Salahi?
Present.
And Chair Flores-Fang?
Present.
Chair Flores-Fang, with 5 members present, you have a quorum.
With that, I call agenda item 2, general public comment. Is there anyone in the room who would like to offer public comment?
Hi, my name is Esther Marks, and I'm speaking as an individual. I had sent a letter with my objection to increasing the donation limit to $1,000, and I hope you did receive that. But also, this morning I want to speak Steve Hill, who I think, I would consider an expert on public finance. And he did ask that the Commission delay a vote on the legislation that you're proposing about public finance, and that a group of interested individuals be convened to discuss the implications of what you're proposing. And I strongly suggest that you delay the decision about accepting the legislation this morning. I did participate along with Steve Hill. That's why I call him an expert, because I know I'm not an expert. I think it was 2019 when we last made changes to the public finance program, and it was a different director at that point, but she did have interested individuals participate, including a commissioner. And we worked with a legislative aide called Edward Wright, who worked for Gordon Marr. And we came up with a proposal that we presented to the Commission, which I thought was quite expert. And you may not realize it, but it was very expert, and I learned a lot from that process. And so I urge you to do the same thing this time with the changes for public finance. Again, I'm not an expert, and I suspect you are not an expert also. So it would be great to convene a group of people who are interested in this issue, who can discuss the implications of what you're proposing and come up with a recommendation.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? here today? Okay. All right, can you please check the queue?
Chair, we do have a couple callers in the queue. One moment till they connect. Caller, welcome. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Hi, welcome. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Great, thank you. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Stephen Hill, and I'm one of the co-authors of the public financing law, along with Common Cause. We passed that law in 2000. A vote of the voters of San Francisco passed it, and then since then, I've been involved in numerous revisions and amendments, and working with ethics commissioners such as yourselves and the ethics commission staff to update it and just create a number of revisions to it. The last time we did this was in 2019, and as Esther Marks just referred to, the Ethics Commission, the director then, Leanne Pelham, convened several in-person meetings with people such as myself, Common Cause, Fair Vote, the California Clean Money, League of Women Voters, and we all sat around and really, got into the nitty-gritty of the legislation and tweaked it and made it better in 2019. And so it seems to me this kind of process has not happened in this go-around of trying to update and revise the public financing law. And notably, one of the proposals before you, which is to lift completely the expenditure limits on candidates, that proposal was unanimously rejected by the Ethics Commission in 2019. Because if you do that, you're actually turning the San Francisco law into a version of the law that Los Angeles has, and that has contributed to a lot of corruption, a lot of candidates blowing through the expenditure limits, and just generally watering down the legislation. Notably also, the law as we wrote it in 2000 says that any revisions you do must be contributing to the mission of the public financing law. This change to the expenditure limits of the law would be actually reversing what this law does and would be in violation of the law itself. So I'd be happy to go into more detail, but the point is I think we need to all come together. I think if you delay this for a month, it's not going to delay being able to enact it, because we're not using this public financing law until the November 2026 elections anyway. So there is time to work together, collaborate, get this right, and that's what we're asking you to do. I'll give more detail when we come up to this agenda item of what's the problem with the change that you are about to do and that the Ethics Commission unanimously rejected in 2019. It was the exact same proposal that was brought to the Ethics Commission then by the staff of the Ethics Commission, which included Director Pat Ford, who was then part of the staff. And it really created a lot of people who were not happy with that change at all, because of how it would completely undermine the incentives that are built into the system to try and tamp down the overwhelming rise in not only expenditures by candidates, but independent expenditures as well. And we'll be happy to go into that in other comments part of the law. So again, I learned about this 3 days ago. And I wish we had been able to weigh in a month ago.
Caller, thank you for your comments. Your time has expired.
All righty.
Chair, we have a couple more people in the queue. Give them 1 moment to connect.
Thank you.
Welcome, caller. Can you hear us? Welcome, caller. Can you hear us?
I'm David Schmidt.
Thank you, David. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Okay. I'm a longtime San Francisco volunteer for the California Clean Money Campaign. I've been involved in public campaign financing and disclosure of contributions for the past 20 years. I urge you to reject the one and done lifting of expenditure limits in attachment 4 and keep the contribution and personal loan limit as it is. Do not raise it to $1,000. One and done essentially eliminates expenditure limits because every competitive race will have an independent expenditure. So that means there will be no expenditure limits for anybody. And we know this because it happened in LA where they have this one and done system. And we submitted a letter to you about the Los Angeles system. It produces unfair results. Incumbents who benefit from special interest independent expenditures get to raise unlimited amount from wealthy donors. This defeats the purpose of public financing. It's a perverse incentive to candidates to solicit unlimited independent expenditures. Also, raising contribution limits to $1,000 is a terrible idea. How many people can afford to make a $1,000 contribution? Only wealthy people. Again, this defeats the purpose of public financing, which is to amplify the voices of small contributors, not wealthy contributors. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Chair, we have a couple more people in the queue. Give them a couple moments to connect.
Sure.
Hello.
Welcome, caller. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Okay, hi, I'm Carol, and I am also representing the California Clean Money Campaign. We've been working for several years to try and get the limits taken off of the non-charter cities so that they can have campaign funding and make a more level playing field for all candidates, not just the rich ones. And so this is a very bad idea. And San Francisco should be leading the state on having clean money and limits on campaign contributions, not trying to destroy it. You know, we should be the example, and this is a bad idea. And so I just heard about this like 15 minutes ago. So it would be nice if you, at the least, put a delay on it to give people the opportunity to give you feedback. But I think it's just a bad idea. We're trying to get the whole state with campaign finance, and now we're going to turn around and exit? No, bad idea. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Chair Flores Fang, we have a couple more in the queue. Give them a couple moments to connect. Welcome, caller. Can you hear us?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, caller, your 3 minutes starts now.
Hi, my name is Carla Kincaid Yoshikawa. I'm a San Francisco voter, and I just heard about this late yesterday, and I'm also with the California Clean Money Campaign. I've been working very hard to have everybody be able to cut the puppet strings that politicians find themselves attached to when they have to take big money from the donors who have vested interests and want them to do things that are not in the public interest. We're trying to make those puppet strings go away, not strengthen them, and not make them more transparent than they are, so that we can't even see them, so they're masked. So both of these ideas of doubling the personal contribution limits and also really removing the private expenditure limits is ridiculous, and it just guts the whole intent of this process. So please do not pass this. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Chair Flores Fang, there's still more callers in the queue. We'll give them a couple moments to connect. Welcome, caller. Can you hear us?
Hello?
Welcome, caller. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Hey, my name is Patrick Cassidy. I'm a veteran, a San Francisco resident, and I'm also a California Clean Money Campaign volunteer. I'm here because I think the one and done proposal is nothing short of giveaway to big money interests. It doesn't just weaken our finance system, it guts it. The point of matching funds is simple. It's to keep private fundraising under control and give ordinary voters a voice, but this plan will blow a hole right in the middle of that. As soon as independent groups send just a little bit of money, the ceiling vanishes for everybody, and outside spending happens in every competitive race in San Francisco. So that means the ceiling won't be a ceiling at all. It's just a speed bump in the way before ultimately having no spending limits. I think if you pass this, our public finance system will collapse into an empty shell. Public financing will be nothing more than a label, while big donors and special interests lap their way to the bank. We all know outside money is coming. That's why it's more critical than ever to hold firm on candidate fundraising. If you give up both, you'll have no system left. You've handed the keys back to the very forces clean elections were meant to protect us from. One and done is no limits at all and makes public financing a shell of what it used to be. It betrays the voters and undermines the very idea of democracy that puts people before money. I reject this proposal, and I strongly urge you all to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Chair Flores Feng, looks like we have one more caller in the queue. Give them a moment to connect. Welcome, caller. Can you hear us?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome, caller. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Fabulous. Hello, commissioners. My name is Lauren Girardin, and I'm speaking on behalf of the League of Women Voters of San Francisco. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit that empowers voters and defends democracy. Public financing has long been a top priority for the League because it goes right to the heart of our mission. That's making sure the elections reflect the will of the voters, not just the wealthiest donors. We've seen that public financing makes a real difference. People from diverse backgrounds, including women, people of color, and working class San Franciscans get a fair shot at running and winning. When voters see candidates who look like them, share their experiences, and speak to their concerns, they're more likely to believe their vote matters and more likely to turn out. That's what strengthens our democracy. Public financing helps engage underrepresented communities in the political process. San Francisco's innovative 6-to-1 matching fund system has delivered exactly those benefits by empowering small donors and grassroots candidates. That's why we're deeply concerned about the proposed changes in Agenda Item 8. We only learned of them last night, but even at first read, it's clear these proposals risk undermining the progress we've made. First, doubling contribution limits would tilt the playing field toward affluent donors. Most San Franciscans can't afford to write a $1,000 check. Raising the cap from 500 would mean candidates relying on small donor support have an even harder time competing with those backed by wealthy contributors. Second, nearly doubling personal loan limits would primarily benefit candidates with deep personal wealth. That change risks further skewing elections towards the affluent. Third, replacing our city's careful incremental approach with a one-and-done system would risk turning our elections into an arms race. We've seen it in Los Angeles, how this approach allows incumbents benefiting from outside spending to raise unlimited sums from big donors. That's the opposite of what public financing is supposed to achieve and the opposite of what San Francisco deserves. We recognize there are challenges with this current system, and it may be worth exploring inflation adjustments to contribution and loan limits going forward. But these proposals overall move us backward, not forward. We respectfully urge you to reject the current language and instead work with good government partners like California Clean Money Campaign, Common Cause, and the League of Women Voters to find solutions that strengthen rather than weaken San Francisco's matching fund system. We emailed you a letter with additional details. Thank you for your time and for your commitment to protecting the integrity of our elections.
Thank you for your comments. Chair Flores-Fang, we're double checking to see if there's any more callers in the queue. And Chair Flores-Fang, there's no more callers in the queue.
Hearing no further members of the public wishing to speak, general public comment under item 2 is now closed. I now call the consent calendar. Colleagues, as noted in the agenda, there will be no separate discussion on a consent calendar item unless a request is made by a commission member or a member of the public in attendance, in which event the matter will be removed from the consent calendar and considered as a separate item. Does any commissioner wish to discuss any item currently on the consent calendar? Any member of the public? Clerk, I think we should check the queue.
Checking the queue to see if there are any callers. And Chair Flores-Fang, there are no callers for the consent item.
Okay. I actually had a question about the executive. There's something in the executive director's report that I had a question about. It's a brief question. I'm not sure that I have to remove it, but I do seek the guidance of the deputy.
We should pull it and have it as a separate item.
Sure. Okay.
I'll fix my mic.
Yeah, that makes sense. I will pull number 5, the executive director's report. Separate from that, and hearing no further discussion, do I hear a motion to adopt the consent calendar items 3, 4, 6, and 7?
So moved. Second.
Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Certainly. On the motion to adopt the consent calendar, items 3, 4, 6, and 7, Commissioner Ye?
Aye.
Commissioner Francois? Aye. Commissioner Tsai?
Aye.
Commissioner Salahi?
Aye.
And Chair Flores-Fang?
Aye.
Chair Flores-Fang, with 5 votes in the affirmative, the motion passes.
Great. Okay. Now for the, I guess, item number 5, I would like to ask a quick question about the KPI tracker, or the tracker for the streamlined goals, which I find amazing, very exciting. Is that public? I want to better understand how we're going to communicate that moving forward. I know there were updates that we provided, but now that we have this tracker, how are we going to go about providing updates to the public?
Sure. For the record, Executive Director Patrick Ford. So some of the KPIs are ones that we report out on publicly on a routine basis. Others are ones that right now we're using internally just to benchmark and track our work. So this could take whatever form you would find helpful. We just finalized what the KPIs and what our goals would be division by division this week. So, I mean, we could bring that back as part of a future ED report if you want to just see the chart and like what KPIs we're tracking and what our goals are. We could do that. A lot of the KPIs are ones that you already see in the staff reports. So, for example, in the engagement and compliance report, when you see the number of tickets, support tickets that we've been responding to, and what our average response time has been on those, like those are some of the primary KPIs that we're tracking for each division. And it's about 5, average of 5 KPIs for each division. So it's enough to measure what we consider to be the kind of major temples of the work of each division, but not so many that it becomes a huge project each month to keep track of them.
Yeah.
So you will definitely be familiar with a lot of them. But anyway, so
Okay.
yeah, whatever you would find helpful. If you want to bring that back and look at them, yeah, you just let me know what you think.
Okay. Yeah, I'll think on it. I just wanted to know if that was our plan, what our plan was for kind of sharing it with the public. But I mean, I find that a great system, and I'm very excited about it. Any commissioners have any other comments?
I was wondering if Director Ford could speak a little bit more about the Inspector General program as well as the Controller's report.
Sure. So the report that I linked, that's a report that the Controller's office published, and they had a staff person that essentially actually worked on the ballot measure when it was being promulgated through the Board of Supervisors. So then that person went to work for the Controller's office and did further research, looking at other jurisdictions to see how other cities and counties throughout the country have implemented IG programs, what seems to have worked, what doesn't. So that essentially lays out different options of the kind of work that the IG in San Francisco could do, because the ballot measure is kind of not exactly specific about what this IG would do. It generally says investigating waste, fraud, and abuse. So I think the Controller's Office goal was that between the time that the ballot measure was approved by the voters last year and the time that they complete the recruitment, which is ongoing right now, that the Controller's Office would be able to do some work so when that person comes, they would have some kind of a menu of options of the different kinds of things that they would have something to go on. So that was the intent of the report, and we supported them in that work. We met a couple times to help brainstorm how the Inspector General could dovetail into the existing accountability agencies, because obviously we already have a number of departments doing this kind of work. Among them is the Controller's Office. They have their auditors or performance auditors. They have the whistleblower program at the City Attorney's Office. There's the Public Integrity Unit that we work with very closely, the District Attorney's White-Collar Crime Unit we work with a lot, and then obviously the Ethics Commission's Enforcement Unit. So our goal is that when the IG is recruited and that program becomes operational, that we won't be duplicating efforts, that there will be new and unique things that the IG can do that won't overlap too much with the existing agencies to, that it would be effective, it would be a value add, and that the Controller seems to definitely share that goal. So we're looking forward to that person coming on board and working with them and figuring out, what are the places right now that none of the existing accountability agencies are able to reach that they could add. A lot of the input that our office has been giving is especially around grants and contracts. I think the Controller's Office has a great line of sight into that kind of activity. Obviously, they are the controller, so they're in charge of the city's funds. They have the financial system that their office administers. So I think having somebody in that office that has full access and familiarity with those systems, I think that would be a great place for them to start, is what kind of misconduct could they potentially see just by doing reviews within the controller's financial system that would probably feed a lot of good cases to the other accountability agencies. If they were to find conflicts of interest, if they were to potentially find crimes like fraud or conversion, I think that would be great. Likewise, if they were to find contractors that should be debarred, that's a big part of what the City Attorney's Public Integrity Unit does. So those are the kind of collaborations and projects that we're hoping to find with the Controller's IG program.
Thank you.
Very helpful, thank you. Does any member of the public wish to discuss or provide public comment on this item? Clerk, I see you checking the queue. Thank you.
Checking the queue now. One moment. And Chair, there are no callers.
Do I hear a motion to adopt consent calendar item number 5?
So moved. Second.
Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Certainly. Commissioner Ye?
Aye.
Commissioner Francois? Commissioner Tsai?
Aye.
Commissioner Salahi?
Aye.
Chair Flores-Feng?
Aye.
And with 5 votes in the affirmative, the motion passes.
Thank you. I now call agenda item 8, discussion and possible action on legislation related to Ethics Commission streamlining project. I'd like to invite Policy and Legislative Affairs Manager, Mr. Michael Canning, to introduce the item.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'll give a brief overview of the 2 pieces of legislation before you today that are connected with the current streamlining project. As we've discussed in the past, this project is intended to look at various programs and policies administered by the Ethics Commission to determine if they're effective, efficient, and adding value to the city and furthering the mission of the Commission. By way of background, this project began in February of this year, and in March, 2 interested persons meetings were held in connection to the project. In June, staff published 2 reports that presented findings and recommendations to the Commission. Since then, staff have been working with the City Attorney's Office to draft pieces of legislation that are before the Commission today. Last month, these draft ordinances were shared with the Commission and the public, and no substantive changes have been made to the drafts since last meeting when they were presented. On September 2nd, both ordinances were introduced to the Board of Supervisors by Director Ford, and President Mandelman is also sponsoring both ordinances. A representative from President Mandelman's office is here and prepared to speak on the ordinances as well. Staff have also been meeting with the Board of Supervisors to discuss these recommendations, as the legislation will need approval by both the Ethics Commission and the Board of Supervisors to be enacted. Today's item has been agendized for potential action, and staff recommends the Commission vote to approve both ordinances. As a reminder, this matter requires 4 votes to be approved by the Commission. Attachment 1 of today's memo contains 2 tables, one for each ordinance. Each of these tables is organized by code section and describes the changes being made in that section. I'll now give a brief overview of the 2 ordinances. The first ordinance in Attachment 2 would discontinue the registration and reporting requirements for campaign consultants and instead require consultants to supply their clients with the information the client needs to fully report their campaign spending through the other existing disclosures. It would remove the city's requirement to file a supplemental recusal notification with the Ethics Commission for members of city boards and commissions, but would retain all of the other recusal requirements that are currently part of the process. It would also discontinue the disclosure requirements on major developers, and instead, if the developer is paying a nonprofit for lobbyist services, require that developer to provide the lobbyist with the information they would need to register and report under the city's lobbyist chapter. These changes are also summarized in the legislative digest found in Attachment 3. The ordinance in Attachment 4 would streamline how expenditure ceilings apply to candidates by having those ceilings apply consistently to all candidates in the race, and establish a process for removing the ceilings in a race based on spending by third parties and non-participating candidates. This would replace the current process of applying ceilings to candidates individually and then indefinitely raising those ceilings many times throughout the election. Having a one-and-done model for lifting expenditure ceilings per race will simplify the process for campaigns and commission staff and is consistent with how similar jurisdictions, such as Los Angeles, administer their ceilings. Staff have found no example of any other jurisdiction that has expenditure ceilings that applies them on a per-candidate basis. They are, as far as we know, universally applied on a per-race basis and lifted at the same time for all candidates. This ordinance would also increase the city's contribution limit from $500 to $1,000 to adjust for changes in inflation. This change is based on changes to the California Consumer Price Index since the year 2000, when the limit was set. I'd also like to thank the commenters earlier and address some of the feedback we've heard from stakeholders this week regarding their concerns about the changes to the expenditure ceiling and the contribution limit increase. Start by saying that we agree that the public financing program is a critical program administered by the Commission, and that these changes are intended to strengthen and modernize the program and make sure that it remains viable for years to come. Regarding the current expenditure ceiling process, we understand advocates' desire to try and impose different ceilings on different candidates based on the spending specifically for or against those candidates and the hypothetical benefit that that could provide. However, we don't believe that pursuing that goal is worth the burden it places on candidates and city staff. The real utility of expenditure ceilings exists when there are few candidates, or when all or most of the candidates in a race are participating in the program and subject to that ceiling. In instances like this, the ceiling can be an effective tool to limit overall spending. However, as soon as there is an outside candidate who's not participating in the program and thus not subject to the limits, who is raising and spending large quantities of money, or if there are large independent expenditures in the race, the benefits of that ceiling are lost, and that's when we believe ceilings should be lifted. Looking back, if the proposed system was in place in 2024, ceilings would have been lifted in 4 of the 6 supervisorial races. In the other 2, the ceilings would have remained in place because, as described in those races, there were candidates that were mostly participating and subject to the limit, and not a significant amount of independent expenditures. Under the new ceiling, that would have been 4 adjustments made to those 4 race ceilings, whereas under the current system, in just board races, there were 126 adjustments made, and those adjustments were often, the majority of the time, not actually limiting any spending. In all but 12 of those instances, the candidate who had their ceiling lifted had not yet raised enough money to even be held back by their ceiling. I would also like to flag that it's not just a single independent expenditure or a small amount of independent expenditures that would trigger this raising of the limit. For members of the Board of Supervisors, independent expenditures would have to pass $309,000 in the race before the ceiling was lifted. That's significantly higher than in other jurisdictions. Los Angeles, for example, is just $77,000 in independent expenditures in a race, triggers the raising of their ceiling. So ours would be significantly higher and make it a lot more of a hurdle for an independent expenditure committee to spend to the point that they raise the ceiling. Regarding the increase to the contribution limit, we believe it is, again, important to look to other jurisdictions which regularly have incremental updates to their contribution limits to account for inflation. Without making such adjustments, over time, what could be a reasonable limit will effectively become a prohibition as it becomes more and more restrictive without inflationary adjustments. We also believe that for those concerned about the increased role of independent expenditures in elections, having a very low limit on candidate-controlled committees could potentially drive donors to those third-party committees. If they're maxing out with the support they can give to a candidate, they might redirect that money into independent expenditures where there's less control and oversight. In terms of next steps, as stated, staff recommends voting to approve both ordinances found in Attachment 2 and Attachment 4. If approved by the Commission today, both ordinances would then need to be approved by the Board of Supervisors next month. If at any point during the board's consideration they were to make substantive amendments to the ordinances, they would need to come back to the Ethics Commission for an additional vote and approval by the Ethics Commission. If both the Board of Supervisors and the Ethics Commission was to approve the ordinances in a timely fashion, we believe the ordinance would be able to be implemented in time for next year's election cycle. One of the constraints of that is if we get to a point where the operative date is significantly farther into next year, then we're potentially switching streams on folks during an election cycle, which can be problematic and lead to confusion. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions you all have, and I also believe Director Ford might want to add additional comments, and as mentioned, there's a staffer from President Mandelman's office who would also like to speak as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. Through the chair, I'll just add a few things, which is the changes to the IEC that are proposed in this ordinance are part of this larger package that we have before you today that consists of 2 ordinances. All of these proposals throughout both ordinances have the purpose of identifying instances in the laws that we administer that are imposing burdens on people but are not justified by strong policy benefits. That's the same for the campaign consultant program, the injury developer program. All of the laws that we're proposing changing are places where we think the laws on the books are simply not providing the policy benefits that they were originally intended to. And I think it can be disappointing sometimes when policies don't have their intended effects. We feel it. When policies are created, policymakers have the highest hopes that the policies that we're creating will have the intended outcomes. That's why we do this work. That's why we show up at City Hall. But it's also part of our jobs as policymakers to recognize when those policies simply aren't having the effects that were intended. And that's what this project is all about. It's not the most fun kind of policymaking. I think it's oftentimes a lot more exciting to create new things and not necessarily to go back and review and tweak or roll back things, but it's equally as important. It's how we make sure we don't have dead weight in the code. It's how we make sure we're not burning out our regulated community on a bunch of requirements that they're following and they don't know why, and we can't demonstrate a clear purpose or benefit from it. It's crucial that we're not doing that to people. That's feedback that we get a lot, and we're very sensitive and careful about it. Those are things we definitely need to be cautious of so that we have only the laws on the books that we are very confident in, so that when we're telling people they need to follow them through our compliance programs and we're penalizing people for not following them through our enforcement programs, we know it's because those laws are important, because we can demonstrate that they're having the effects that they were intended to have. Independent or individual expenditure ceiling is not having the intended effects that it was created for 25 years ago. There's absolutely no evidence that adjustable spending limits that are done on a per candidate basis have restrained IE spending. I also want to point out that restraining IE spending is not the primary purpose of the public financing program. Providing candidates who have a demonstrated level of grassroots support with the funds they need to run a viable campaign is the purpose. It's about getting more candidates into the political process. It's about inclusiveness. It's about having a diverse candidate pool. It's about candidates not having to spend their time dialing for dollars, but being able to spend their time going out and door knocking, going to farmers markets, talking to voters. We're not trying to level the playing field here by trying to pick winners and losers and trying to keep down certain spending. We actually can't do that. Federal courts have struck that down as a government interest. IE spending, whether we like it or not, is political speech that's protected under the First Amendment. So we have to be very careful. We cannot say we're going to set up this program so that it stops certain political speech. We really need to focus on we're empowering the candidates who have that grassroots level of support. That's what we need to focus on as the purpose of this program. And right now, the candidates who are participating in this program have to file hundreds of reports with our office constantly throughout the election. We've heard from them loud and clear that they find this incredibly burdensome. We're afraid that it could be a disincentive to them participating in the program. We also know that they have to spend money paying professional treasurers to file these reports on their behalf. So they're literally spending the money that we're giving them through the program to pay compliance professionals to file the reports they need to in order to comply with the program's requirements. That was certainly not the intended purpose of the program. If we switch to this model of IEC adjustments, we can significantly relieve the participating candidates from these filing obligations. They would only need to file up until the time that the spending limit is removed in their race, and they don't need to file these forms anymore. They can focus more on participating in the election. So I just wanted to provide that context of why we included this in this package. And I also wanted to provide some context that predates Michael's time here with the Commission, which is back in 2019, which was the last time that the Commission considered a pretty large package of changes to the public financing program, way beyond the scope of what we're looking at today. There's only this one element of the public financing program in this ordinance. Back in 2019, there were many. That's when we switched to the 6-to-1 match. It's when we increased the total amount that candidates could get. It's when we decreased the amount of a contribution that could be matched. We decreased it from the full 500 down to only 150 so that we're supercharging the smaller dollars contributions. That was a program that was really ordinance that was really overhauling the program. This is much more tactical. This is a very limited change to only one part of the program. But back then, the Commission decided instead of switching to the model that we're proposing again now, they wanted to wait and see how the next few elections would go. And what they did instead at that time is they chose to increase the increment size by which these many IEC adjustments would happen. The theory was, well, if we increase the increment size of adjustments, there will just be fewer of them, and that will reduce the burden on people. They wanted to see how that approach went. And what we're saying in this report is now we've had a full 4-year election cycle under those laws that the Commission and the Board adopted in 2019. That didn't pan out. We had 295 IEC adjustments in the November election, and less than 10% of them actually had any possible effect on candidates because 90% of those changes were to spending limits that were above the amount that the candidate had, meaning they don't even have the money to spend. Their expenditure ceiling might be, let's say you're running for Board of Supervisors, your expenditure ceiling might be $600,000, but you only have $300,000 that you've raised. So there's no practical limit. And I think it's really important with these policies that we focus on what are the actual effects of the policy, not the hypothetical effects. So even though you still have a spending limit in place, in theory, if it's double the money that you actually have, it's not operative. The limit is not actually affecting you. So in 90% of the cases, the limit is far beyond what the candidates have. So that's how we can tell it's not actually operating to affect the candidates in the race. We tried that for the last 4 years to see if maybe the larger increments would change this, and that's why we're coming back now. So I don't think it's the case that the commission decided, it was 100% different commissioners too, that they decided never to pursue this policy. I think they decided on a compromise approach, see how it would go, and I think now we've seen how it has gone, and it hasn't gone well. So I wanted to provide that context to you as well. Thank you.
Very helpful context, thank you. Yes, any public comment?
Hello. Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Melanie Mathewson, and I'm a legislative aide for President Raphael Mandelman. I'm here today on his behalf to express his support for the ethics streamlining effort before you today. Over the last few years, President Mandelman has worked closely with the City Administrator's Office to streamline our contracting and procurement processes. One lesson from that effort is that when well-intentioned rules become duplicative or overly burdensome, they can undermine compliance and distract from the real goals of the policy. The same principle applies here. President Mandelman appreciates the Ethics Department's work to identify outdated or redundant reporting and filing requirements and to simplify compliance so the department and this commission can focus the efforts where they really have the greatest impact. In particular, he supports raising the individual contribution limit from $500 to $1,000, a limit that has not been updated in decades, and a change that will provide candidates with a more realistic fundraising tool in today's environment. I want to thank Director Ford and his staff, particularly Michael Canning, for many conversations with myself and President Mandelman over the last few months. Thank you to Deputy City Attorney Kathleen Reyes and Brad Rusi for drafting this legislation. And finally, thank you for all of you for undertaking this effort.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak? Clerk, would you please check the queue?
Checking the queue to see if there's any callers. And Chair Flores Fang, we do have a caller in the queue. We'll give them a couple moments to connect.
Hello?
Welcome, caller. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you. My name's Stephen Hill. I introduced myself earlier. One thing I wanted to say in terms of process, we used to be able to email the ethics commissioners directly, but it's hard to reach any of you. Your email addresses are not on your website, so it's been kind of we're coming into this late, didn't know about any of these changes, and so it would be appreciated to be able to email you directly. The ethics staff are advancing for you two theories about why you should do something differently than what the Ethics Commission decided unanimously in 2019. One, that the incremental lifting of the caps doesn't do any good, and secondly, candidates don't like it, and it's burdensome on staff. And we're, especially the burdensome on staff, I'm very sympathetic to, and there are ways to actually make it less burdensome on staff if we'd been able to have a collaborative process and talk with them about, for example, SB 42, which is about to be passed by the state legislature, took San Francisco's version as a model for how changing them incrementally, but it tweaked it a little bit, created a modified version that it would be less burdensome on staff. So that was the example where if we were all in dialogue about this, we could have come up with a compromise that I think would have worked quite well. In terms of it doesn't do any good, Mr. Ford had his charts and graphs back in 2019 also purporting to show that it doesn't do any good. And what it ignored is we had a couple of different campaign consultants and campaign managers coming in and testifying and saying, like, actually, maybe the numbers show that it doesn't do any good, but if I'm a campaign consultant or a manager, it actually changes my attitude, my approach to how I run the campaign. It means that I know that if I know that the independent expenditure, expenditure cap is going to be lifted at some point, then I don't have to hold back any money. I can just keep spending and spending and spending. But if I know that it's possible that the cap may not be blown because no one ever reaches that cap, then I have to be more careful with my dollars, and I have to not just go out and spend as much as I can and raise as much as I can. So as much as it doesn't do as much as I or Mr. Ford or any others would like about independent expenditures, it does act on as a drag on how candidates and campaigns approach their campaign, how they raise their money, and how quickly and how fast they spend their money during the campaign. If you look at what happened in Los Angeles, where they have this very system that is being proposed, they spend way more money per capita on their campaigns than we do in San Francisco. And right now in Los Angeles, there are 3 city council members who have been sentenced to prison for corruption, and a 4th one is on trial. And there's many reasons why
Stephen,
that's
thank you for your comments. Your time has
I think
expired.
that this kind of process in LA has contributed to that kind of environment.
Chair Flores-Fang, we're checking to see if there's any more callers in the queue.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chair Fang and Commissioners. I'm Trent Lang, Executive Director of the California Clean Money Campaign. We've been working since 2002 to reduce the influence of big money in California politics with over 15,000 supporters here in San Francisco. We're the lead sponsors of SB 42, the California Fair Elections Act, co-authored by Senator Wiener and Assemblymember Haney, to repeal the state ban on public financing of campaigns. We only learned yesterday about these sweeping proposed changes in Attachment 4 that we are deeply concerned about. We're especially concerned about the new attempt to put into place a one-and-done system for lifting expenditure limits that this commission unanimously rejected in 2019, and for good reasons. San Francisco's current incremental approach to lifting expenditure limits is fair and targeted. It raises limits only for candidates disadvantaged by independent expenditures, not for those who benefit from them. That's how you protect fairness. In fact, it's such a positive approach that we've used it as a model for the guidelines in SB 42. One and done, as used in Los Angeles, eliminates expenditure limits in most competitive races. Essentially makes them a farce. There's no expenditure limits, leading to substantial increases in spending. For example, in 2018, under San Francisco's incremental system, the largest spender in the mayor's race went over only 53% over the initial ceiling. In Los Angeles, with no ceiling after IE, the largest spender in a comparable mayoral race went 137% over, more than $3 million extra because the limits were completely removed. The harms have gotten worse since then. In 3 LA City Council primaries last year, where the cap was lifted, the only candidates able to raise enough money to take advantage of removing the cap were the ones who benefited from the independent expenditures in the first place. That doubles their unfair advantage. First from the IEs, then for being able to raise unlimited amounts from wealthy donors that their competitors could not match. These are the actual effects of one and done. These unfair abuses of increased expenditure limits would not have happened with San Francisco's current system. Abandoning San Francisco's system would bring the same unfairness here. So we urge you to reject one and done. But we also recognize the current formula, and Stephen mentioned this, can trigger too many incremental increases. SB 42 includes a simple fix that will reduce unnecessary increases while keeping the fairness of the current approach. Delaying today's vote would allow you to work with us, California Common Cause, the League of Women Voters, and local experts like Steve to improve your incremental expenditure increase formula rather than abandon it. We urge you to work with us on that. Finally, we also oppose doubling contribution and personal loan limits. Doubling those limits would tilt the playing field towards affluent donors and candidates. It would also make it harder for matching fund candidates to compete. Most regular voters cannot give $1,000 to a campaign. As the staff pointed out, the average for other cities is $777. San Francisco should be better than that, not higher and worse. So in closing, please stand with your 2019 colleagues, reject one and done.
Caller, your time has expired. Thank you for your comments. Chair Flores-Fang, we're checking to see if there's any more callers in the queue. And Chair Flores-Fang, there are no more callers.
Thank you. Do my fellow commissioners have any comments? Happy to start us off very briefly. I appreciate that these proposed changes have invited lively discussion, very meaningful discussion from those who are experts in the field and those who are very invested in the outcome of our elections. I think that's very important. And I'd just like to note that this, that the commission voting to pass the legislation today doesn't end that discussion. As Mr. Canning shared, this is a first step. This then goes to the Board of Supervisors. The staff remains involved in, revising and sharpening this legislation, and as does the public. And so this doesn't end the discussion, and I just want to make sure the public knows that, so that we're not disheartened. I think this is part of the process, and I'm very excited that there is discussion and that everyone, cares and is inviting us to think deeply about the repercussions of these tweaks in language that we know have long-lasting effects. So I invite everybody to continue to engage and not be disheartened that passing this would mean that the discussion is ended.
I have some questions about different aspects of it. That's okay. So just part of it, just making sure I understand some of the proposals, and start with maybe the least contentious one, is the revisions to the campaign consultant filings. Under these revisions, there's no longer a requirement for the campaign consultants to directly register with file these disclosures with the ethics department.
Correct.
But there's still an enforcement scheme in case a campaign consultant fails to provide their required information to their clients.
Correct.
Is there a way for the commission to detect those violations based on the disclosures that come from the clients/campaigns, or would it have to be disclosed by somebody with knowledge to the commission?
Those complaints could be generated probably the same means of any other enforcement matter. So a complaint from somebody who, say, saw someone engaging in campaign consultant activity, if that wasn't being reflected on the expenditures made by the committee, that could be the basis for a complaint. Yeah, I'm not sure of exactly how those would get flagged necessarily, but I think probably the same concern would exist now if somebody just wasn't registering and reporting under that program. The mechanisms for how we would know they weren't doing it would be similar to how we would know if their activity wasn't being reported by the committee on their 460.
I could add something to that, which is I think when committees report payments to consultants, sometimes there's uncertainty because I think consultant fees are sometimes structured in ways where the ultimate cost is not known up front. I think sometimes consultants are paid toward the end of an election cycle. Their fees are often a percentage of the total spend. So if they're going to buy $1 million of advertising, maybe then their fee will be 10% of that or something, but you don't know how much advertising you're going to spend until the fundraising happens and you get public funds, and there's a lot of contingencies. So I think the form this would probably take is committees having to go back, amend their 460 to show what their actual ultimate payments were to their consultant, then our auditors catching that and questioning why such a material change to the 460 had been made, why the information hadn't been made public at the time it was required, and then the committee telling us, oh, we didn't know because our consultant didn't tell us. Then we would go to the consultant and say, hey, you have this affirmative obligation under the law to inform the committee, your client, of the costs. And then we would have a conversation with them and assess whether or not they had complied with that notice provision. So that's probably the most likely way that would come up is us auditing the committee's disclosures.
That was helpful. Thank you.
I would also add, Commissioner, that this proposed change does put the compliance burden on the committees primarily, who are regularly making filings and disclosures with our office already, whereas the campaign consultants, this is like the one and only form they'd be required to file with our office. So there's a bit of a concern that we're kind of putting this obligation on people who are not used to making those types of disclosures and regularly filing, whereas the committees are reporting all of their spending, and this is just one type of spending they'd be still reporting.
I have questions about that part.
We piggyback off of yours.
Moving on to attachment 4, regarding the change to the contribution limit to candidates from $500 to $1,000. I was trying to pull this up while you were presenting, but I wasn't savvy enough with the data. I was just curious if you have a sense, based on the most recent campaigns, how many donors actually are at the existing limit versus lower than that limit. I'm just trying to understand, like, what the impact of this would be.
Don't have that number offhand, unfortunately. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
It's okay. And then I noticed that there are, I remember talking about that extensively at our prior meeting, so I understand that. But the limits on loans to candidates is a program I'm not super familiar with, so just curious what the thinking is behind changing those numbers as well.
Same as with the other contribution limit, just an inflationary adjustment to reflect changes in CPI. This is the limit on the amount that a candidate can loan their committee and get paid back for. If the candidate is contributing to their committee, they can do that without any limit whatsoever, but there is a local cap here on how much they can loan and get paid back. And this section needed to be amended for, I believe, a reference to another thing that was being updated. So at the same time, we're like, oh, we should also adjust this for inflation while that section is otherwise being amended.
And then, is there a potential interaction between the change in the individual donor limit and the reforms to the public financing program? You know, it's probably too simplistic to look at this change and think, oh, this means campaign spending is going to 2x because we're changing the individual limit.
One of the concerns that we heard from an advocate that we were engaging with on this was whether or not raising the contribution limit would also equate to raising the maximum matchable amount that an individual contribution could be maxed at, because that could kind of erode some of the benefits of the program if someone was able to give the full $1,000 and have all $1,000 matched 6-to-1. That was their concern, and we clarified that that's not part of this proposal. The $150 limit would still be all that is matchable, which is, again, kind of similar to what we see in other jurisdictions. So if someone, like right now, if someone gave $500, the first $150 would be matched. That same process would be true under this proposal. If they give $1,000, only the $150 gets matched. So it is still incentivizing reaching out to smaller dollar donors and getting that match from them.
I have one question about the limits on loans to candidates. How did you come up with the numbers? For instance, the increase from $15,000 to $27,000 for the Board of Supervisors and Board of Education.
I believe those limits, like the other contribution limits, were set in 2000. So the California CPI adjustment from 2000 to earlier this year was roughly a doubling, which is where that comes from.
Has San Francisco typically been lower than other cities in California? I mean, is that our tradition?
I mean, the amount of San Francisco hasn't changed in the last 25 years. I know other jurisdictions have been raising those over time, so I don't have the exact comparison, but I would suspect that it was probably started out being maybe comparable, and then as time goes by and other jurisdictions raise their amounts, ours has become lower. I'm not sure if at the time in the year 2000, if it was significantly higher or lower than other jurisdictions.
I think I would just add to that we're a little unique just as a city and county, recognizing that like some county-wide races have pretty high contribution limits. I think in Alameda County it might be $20,000 for county-wide races, just for example. So $500 obviously a lot lower than that, but we're a city and a county, so it's a little weird. You have to look kind of at city and county limits statewide.
I had one more question about the language of the process for lifting expenditure ceilings. As I understand it, that primary decision resides with the executive director, and then it goes to the commission to decide, well, I guess the language on page 11 of attachment 4 says it goes to the chair of the commission. And then is the intention that the chair has the sole decision whether to put it before the whole commission, or it wasn't clear to me whether the they there refers to the commission or the chair, and if the commission, what process we would have to follow to make that decision that would be outside of a meeting.
Yeah, I can speak to that. That's not the process for adjusting the limits. That's for if there's an objection to a raising of the limit. So, oh, okay, sorry. Yeah. Yes. So in that case, after the determination is made by the executive director to raise the ceiling based on the spending in a race, those subject in the race would have the ability to raise an objection, which would then be shared with the chair, who could then decide whether or not to request a commission review of the determination, in which case a meeting would need to be called where the commission could decide whether or not the change was approved or not. We imagine this would not be a fairly common practice, since it's a pretty cut and dry amount as to whether or not the spending was exceeded or not, and I suspect most of these issues would be resolved at the executive director level, where if an error was made in calculation, that would just be corrected and the ceiling would not be raised, in which case the other steps would not be necessary. I don't know if Director Ford wants to speak to that. Answer your question, Mr. Sorry.
Yeah, I think so. So the way as it's written now is only the chair of the commission can decide whether to bring it before the commission or not.
Correct. I think part of the concern there is just the timing of it, in that after the recommendation is made, there would normally be a 24-hour period before it kind of becomes effective, and that's when that period gets pushed progressively back if there was an objection. And given that this theoretically would be happening in October of an election year, having a larger process where all the commissioners were to weigh in could delay a thing where we have the ceiling being held in place or being lifted incorrectly. So I think the idea of having the chair help make that determination would be just expediency of the process, and if there was a concern to get it before the commission, which would probably have to be in a special meeting, given the pace of the election cycle.
Yeah, that's a lot of responsibility to put on one person during that period. I wonder if the language might benefit from some flexibility to either have that delegated by the chair if, for example, the chair is unavailable when something like this comes up for review. Or
Yeah, I think that would be very reasonable. I think we'd probably clarify that through regulation, that the chair could designate that. I think that would be within the scope of the regulatory authority.
Yeah, we could work on a possible regulatory change. That could be something that comes into the bylaws potentially, but we could figure something out on that.
I think I just have a general comment left on everything. Thank you for clarifying those questions. I really appreciate Executive Director Ford's comments about the importance of reevaluating policy proposals based on how they actually perform over time. I think we all here share the same interest that the chair spoke of earlier in making sure that our campaigns are not unduly influenced by people with access to a lot of resources and disenfranchising those who don't have as many resources. But at the same time, when these rules were initially adopted, the landscape on the law on campaign finance was very different. And the ability to have independent expenditures in the race without being subject to caps or regulation is something that I think also changes the way we have to think about how limits on expenditures for publicly funded candidates can apply to. So I think this is a big set of changes, but one that seems reasonable given the experiences over the past few years and the diminished benefits of some of the day-to-day adjustments that were being made that had very little practical effect on the campaign. So thank you for all your work on this and for engaging with stakeholders over the past few months. I know this has been on the commission agenda several times this year.
We did hear from a number of people today from various organizations or associated with various voter elections organizations. Were there any voter or election organizations that's what you've been in contact that support these changes?
We haven't received any formal letters of support. I've been in touch with staff contacts at California Common Cause, had an initial kind of preliminary discussion of the concepts of the project back in February, and then engaged a little more this week on those. I believe Common Cause will be looking at the proposals more deeply and potentially making comments one way or another. And similarly, we have talked to folks in other jurisdictions. This week we circled back with Los Angeles to learn more about how their program works in practice, and get a sense of any kind of concerns they have with the operation, and did not hear much of the concerns there.
Mr. Hill raised some issues regarding potential corruption that was happening in Los Angeles. Did you look into that?
Not as part of this project. I think those are pretty discrete issues. We've spent a lot of time following the LA cases. I'm not aware of those cases having any kind of intersection with public financing, with legal campaign fundraising practices. Those certainly all seemed like just incredibly unlawful criminal activities that were happening. I don't think that the changes to how our spending limits work in our public financing program would make San Francisco any more vulnerable to honest services fraud or bribery or any of the other federal offenses that took place in those cases. I think those are separate things that we need to watch for, and that we certainly are. I think Prop D last year really helped us. We adopted the federal bribery statute or something effectively similar, Section 666. We have a very strong bribery rule in San Francisco now. I think that's the most important thing to do, and to work with our colleagues in District Attorney's Office, City Attorney, the new Inspector General, with the FBI when appropriate. So I think we're definitely keeping our eyes on that, but not through our public financing program.
Great, thank you.
Great. Do I hear a motion on the matter to approve the legislation presented in attachments 2 and 4?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Clerk, on the motion to approve the legislation presented in attachments 2 and 4, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Commissioner Ye?
Aye.
Commissioner Francois?
Aye.
Commissioner Sai?
Aye.
Commissioner Salahi?
Aye.
Chair Flores-Fang?
Aye.
Chair Flores-Fang, with 5 votes in the affirmative, the motion passes.
Thank you. I now close agenda item 8. And I now call agenda item 9, discussion and possible action on items for future meetings. Does any commissioner wish to speak on this item? Any public comment?
Chair Flores-Fang checking to see if there's any callers in the queue.
Thank you.
And Chair Flores-Fang, there are no callers.
Item 9 is now closed. I now call agenda item 10, an additional opportunity for general public comment. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak here today? Seeing no one in the crowd, anyone in the queue?
Chair Flores-Fang, it looks like we do have a caller. Give him 1 moment to connect.
Well, hello. How are you? You guys are in room 400. Oh, that's near the penthouse, way up there. Hey, yeah, you guys could really light up the dome on that. It's pretty bright in there. I don't know, Mr. Lightman, can you dim the lights a bit? Anyway, lots going on. Hey, we got to work on Engardio, man. I think you guys were investigating him. There's also the matter of the budget. The budget's at $322 million. That's short in, SFMTA. Then you also got to look at SF Park Alliance. Oh man, what a fiasco that is. Yeah, you guys got to also look out for another resource too. Guys, he's an incredible guy. He's been around for quite a while. I think he's actually in his 90s. First name Quentin, last name Kopp. That's with a K and 2 P's. Really, really good guy. So make sure you guys hook up with him, get his advice. In the meantime, I don't know what the deal is or why everyone's got their panties in a bunch about this campaign financing. There should be no ceiling. All you got to do is press the flesh. We got Lurie, like I said, 25,000 votes because we pressed the flesh. We met with the community. Now the replacement's either Albert Choi or Arthur Tom or any other one that wants to run. And it should be done by the voters. The voters should vote them in. I know Lurie's going to appoint one of them or somebody else, but really it should be a democracy. The voters need to vote somebody in. So anyway, Ford, I don't know why you're still there. I thought, didn't I fire you? I mean, didn't we all fire you? I think you were like on your way out, but in the meantime, you're lighting up our dome with that chrome dome. But in the meantime, also, I love the hair. I love what you've done to your hair. You look great. You should smile more. When you smile, the world smiles back. All right, kids, and remember, vote yes on A next week. All right, adios.
Chair Flores-Fang, looks like we do have another caller in the queue.
Okay.
Give it a couple moments for it to connect.
Hello?
Welcome, caller. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, so this is Stephen Hill. The thing I want to say at this point is about the process and how we got here. And this is for you ethics commissioners to really think about what kind of process you want to oversee there at the Ethics Commission. As I mentioned, in 2019, the director convened face-to-face meetings with advocates and experts to get real feedback. And that did not happen in this time of the process. They sent messages out to the interested persons list, but it was carefully coded so that you couldn't really figure out what they were talking about. Instead, they framed it as streamlining, and it wasn't clear at all that they were going to be tampering with the public financing system that we had just adjusted in 2019. And so everybody was caught by surprise by this. I asked them in email exchange over the last few days, did you reach out to anyone like, for example, California Common Cause? And they said, yes, we did. And I asked them who, and they gave me the name Sean McMorris, who I actually happen to know personally. So I called up Sean, and just yesterday, and he said, yeah, they called me just this morning, Thursday. So that's yesterday. That's the first time that anyone at California Common Cause was asked to address this. And it was in the last minute. They hadn't really even seen the changes that were being proposed. So, they weren't really informed enough to give feedback. And so I'm suggesting to you that you as commissioners need to have your own sources of information and just not be relying on staff to give it to you. I know that's a challenge, but the staff have, as they've made it clear, they want to have less work, and I'm sympathetic to that. I was part of the effort that drafted the original initiative, and we gave 15 cents on every dollar that goes into the public financing money to hire staff. And then when we adjusted it to 17 cents, and I believe up to 18 cents on every dollar that goes to staff to administer this program. And so having a program that's for the convenience of the staff, that's not part of the, if you look at the intent that's in the law, that's not in the intent of the law. And so I just think that as a commission, you need to have a way where the public can reach you and not have it all filtered through the staff. And right now, that process does not exist. As a result, the experts and the advocates were shut out of this process. Unlike what happened in 2019, we were able to work with you, with the staff, and the Board of Supervisors to come up with compromises and consensus and really truly have a law that everybody can support. Now you're hearing that the advocates and experts don't support what they're doing, and it doesn't make sense to us because there are ways to tweak what they are proposing to do that would make it easier on staff. If we had an opportunity, we would be happy to work with staff to actually make
Caller,
this
your time
work
has
better.
expired. Thank you for your comments. Chair Flores-Fang checking to see if there's any more callers in the queue. And it looks like we do have a caller. Caller, can you hear us?
Hi, I'm Sam calling on behalf of the League of Women Voters of San Francisco, and I guess around agenda number 8, you guys have been, after public comment that was given, the commission has been discussing for 20 minutes concerning about Agenda 8 without further comment from the public about Agenda 8, which I find egregiously unfair to public participation. And also, I think just, second, Lauren and Trent about finance, but also just about, going back to Prop D March 2024, around, that was voted by 89% of the voters, overwhelmingly supporting strengthening.
Caller, sorry, it's very difficult to hear you. Would you mind calling back in? Maybe we could hear you a little bit more clearly.
Oh. I'll call back in.
Thank you.
Checking to see the queue. Looks like there is another caller.
Hi, this is Trent Lang, president of the California Clean Money Campaign again. I would like, directing it to you, commissioners, I would like to echo what Stephen Hill said about the real problems with this process. The California Clean Money Campaign was heavily engaged in the 2019 process. Over 200 clean money supporters live in San Francisco, sent comments. We helped work with Stephen Hill and others on that process. We are the sponsors of SB 42, a statewide legislation that co-authored by Senator Wieners and Assemblymember Haney on this very topic that is actually taken a lot of positive stuff from your system. And we just found out yesterday. And the staff's saying that they had discussions with California Common Cause. I, again, work closely with Sean McMorris at California Common Cause, the staffer they said they talked to all the time. He said he had never talked with them in any detail about this question at all until yesterday, when he did not have the chance to he didn't understand the system and didn't have a chance to have informed, really understand it, to make comments, nor to speak with his partners at California Clean Money Campaign or the League of Women Voters who we would normally consult with. So we really encourage you to ask staff to do a much better job of reaching out to the stakeholders and experts that have worked with the city before on these issues, rather than rely on interested persons reports with kind of ambiguous headlines that people may not get. I think you would get much more informed decisions that way yourselves. And unfortunately, now we're going to have a fight with the Board of Supervisors over this issue, because we believe we've made a major mistake in just accepting the staff's word on this, as opposed to listening to the experts who know what's happening in Los Angeles and the negative effects that it's had, and who could weigh in. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And Chair Flores-Feng, there is one more caller.
Hi again, calling. Hopefully you can hear me. This is Jen today with League of Women Voters. I'm calling because, I'm frustrated and, disappointed that the Commission continued to, for Agenda 8, continue to have the session after public comment without the public being able to fully participate in Agenda 8. Also, concerning Amendment number 2 of Agenda 8, as mentioned earlier, hopefully you can hear me, that, part of what's being amended is what was being voted on back in March 2024 with Prop D of local ethics laws, and that was voted in by overwhelmingly 89% of the voters back in March 2024. And again, just, hopefully that the Commission obviously voted on, but just that was coming with the Board of Supervisors, there's more outreach with local governments. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Chair Flores-Feng, checking to see if there's any callers in the queue.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can. Go ahead. Your 3 minutes starts now.
Thank you. This is Lauren Girardin from the League of Women Voters. Wanted to call in as my colleague Jen Say is having some tech issues. One of the things that she said that I do want to amplify is taking public comment on an item only before you have your discussion, only before you ask questions, only before you hear from the proponents of what's being proposed is very unfair to those of us who have not been allowed to respond to this measure, to this ordinance, these ordinances that are proposed. We have the answers to the questions that you asked. We have answers to the questions that the proponents of these ordinances did not ask themselves and did not share with you. We were not consulted, and I also hear no mention of other folks who were not consulted. I hear the concerns of campaign consultants, but I do not hear the concerns of small donors. I do not hear the concerns of voters. I hear the concerns of developers. I do not hear the concerns of renters and of labor organizations and of working class people informed these recommendations and these changes. We do encourage you to do your own research when this comes back to you from the Board of Supervisors, if it makes it that far. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Chair Flores-Fang looking to see if there is any more callers in the queue. And there are no more callers in the queue.
Thank you. Hearing no further callers, this additional opportunity for public comment under item 10 is now closed. I now call agenda item 11, which is adjournment. Thank you. This concludes the September 12th, 2025 meeting of the San Francisco Ethics Commission.